Well, there you go. There hasn't been anyone looking to join the next. Ah, there you go. I was going to say no one's looking to join in the next 30 seconds, so we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today, the cuEngage event on open banking. For those who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Hudson. I'm one of the developers here at Wellington IT. So just to let you know, we're going to be doing a wee bit of a Q&A towards the end of the session. So throughout, if you just want to fire your messages in to the chat box, and we'll get them answered for you towards the end. I'm now going to pass you over to our CTO, Ian Glenn, and our digital tech lead, Alan Adair, to kick off the session. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Jonathan. So firstly, I want to extend my welcome to everyone to this cuEngage session, specifically focused on open banking for credit unions. So look, there's been a huge amount of interest in this session, so it's fantastic to see such a great turnout. So thanks to everyone for taking the time this morning. So what I thought I would do, guys, is just kick off by giving you a bit of an overview of how this session is going to run this morning. So to start with, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and just reflect on what is open banking and look at some of the key services it provides and what it can facilitate from that standpoint. We're then going to delve a little bit deeper into some examples of the value that can be added from utilising open banking and what that means specifically for credit unions. We're then going to talk about the initial integration that we've built in terms of open banking embedded within the Wellington platform. Then I'll hand over to my colleague Alan, who's going to give us a live product demonstration and show you how that works in action, both from a member and a credit union standpoint. And then, as Jonathan said, we will make some time at the end for Q&A. So do feel free to put those into the chat as we go through. So to get us started, guys, I thought we'd kind of kick off by just a clear definition of what open banking is. Okay, so we'll just spend a little minute just thinking about this because look, there's a lot of jargon, a lot of confusion, a lot of misunderstanding, you know, both in terms of what it is and why it's relevant and why we care. Okay. So look, what I've done is just put a general definition up here. So open banking is a practice that allows banks and third-party financial service providers secure access to banking and other financial data, right? So at its core, that's what it is. It's a forum about letting banks and financial institutions talk to each other and giving consumers the ability to give consent for their information to be shared for specific purposes. Okay, so that's what it is by definition, right? But what I thought I would do is I've got a little video here that I'm going to play in a second, and what it does is it kind of just talks you through the what the definition is and sort of some of the benefits that can be gained from integrating with open banking. So I'll just play this for you now, guys.
When you hear about open banking, what do you think? Not sure if it impacts me or what it is? How about opportunity? Open banking offers a unique way to better serve customers, to put them in control of how their banking data is used, and in making financial decisions. Open banking allows for the opening of internal bank data and processes to other parties via digital channels. It increases competition and allows for the creation of new products and services. The development of creative solutions that capture the public's attention offers endless possibilities and opportunities. The race is on between established players, new specialists and digital banks, agile fintechs, technology giants, and dominant firms from other industries. Open banking will bring an explosion of innovation as banks, fintechs, and other technology companies play to their strengths.
Okay, guys, so what that video did was give you a bit of a high-level overview of sort of what open banking is and some kind of high-level use cases. So what I wanted to do now was kind of break that down a little bit further, okay, into and again on this kind of theme of busting some of the jargon. So really at its core, open banking provides two core services, okay, and I emphasize today because this is a relatively new and emerging level within the industry. But there's two core services. One in relation to account information and the other in relation to payments, okay? So we look at it from an account information standpoint, which is the little diagram on the left. What this means is that partner banks, okay, so these are banks that are either obligated to sign up to open banking or choose to sign up to open banking, then create this API, this integration that provides access into the bank, okay, from third parties. And what that does is it enables the customer to grant access to that data. Okay, and the data that they're granting access to is typically things like transaction data, balance information, etc. Okay, so these are the banks providing APIs that allow access, and the access needs to be consented by the member or the customer who owns the bank account. Okay, then there are Aisps. So this is just an acronym that stands for Account Information Service Provider. So these are organizations that are set up and configured and licensed to access and aggregate this data. Okay, and what they do effectively is broker access. So what that means is that they can then say, if a consumer or a fintech or a third party wants to get access to a bank, then they can provide a list of banks that are connected, and then direct the member or the customer to pick their bank, use the login secure customer authentication details to log into their bank, and then subsequently provide the data back. Okay, but it's all about providing secure access to banking data consented by the member. So that's what account information is. We then sort of flick across and start talking a little bit about payments. Okay, so payments in a similar vein. Payments.
How are you?
Sorry. So if we then talk a little bit about payments, so from a payments standpoint, issuing banks also connect to the open banking platform in a similar way by building APIs that allow third parties to connect to them. Okay, this is then brokered via a payment initiation service provider in a similar way to the account information service provider. And what they do is they then allow authorized payments to be made on behalf of the client. Okay, and they do this by initiating transfers directly to or from the payer's bank account using the bank's own tools. Okay, so this is about direct access to the bank to say, here I want to make a payment, and here is the account I want to pay from, and I've authenticated and approved this transaction using the standard credentials that I have to connect to my bank, and therefore initiating a direct payment straight from bank to bank. Okay, so those are the two. So if you kind of bear that in mind as we walk through the presentation, those are the two kind of key services that are provided today from an open banking standpoint. Slides are stuck. Apologies. So look, what does all this mean for credit unions, right? So if we bring it back to why we're all here today. So look, just to be clear, although credit unions are not obligated to connect to the open banking network to provide account and payment information services, it absolutely doesn't mean that you can't be a consumer of these services, okay? Because there's a wealth of data services that you can then incorporate into your service offerings to enhance the range and scale and flexibility and services that you provide to your members. So if we kind of consider then the two key services that I talked about in the previous slide around account information and deposits, what I've done here is just pulled out then some specific items that could be availed of from a credit union standpoint, and incorporated into your platform. So if you think about account information, so if you can get a member to grant you access to their current account, you can get verified bank statements. Yeah, so in other words, at source, you're getting it directly from the bank, not from the member. But more importantly than that, what you're getting is transactional data. So you're getting the granular data in an electronic format, right? And that enables you to then do things like start looking at spending patterns, saving patterns, availability of funds and trends. Okay. Some banks offer proof of ownership, so put little asterisks against this because this does vary. There are varying levels of how the banks can sign up to open banking, but proof of ownership can mean that if you get connected to a member's bank account, if that bank provides some proof of ownership, then they can confirm name and address of the account holder, which again you could use as part of your AML checks, for example. And last but by no means least in this list is that it's about making it easy for the member. Okay, so if you're requiring some information from this member, you can make this much easier by saying to them, all I need you to do is connect your bank account, and here's a nice, simple, easy process for doing that. And by the way, the authorization process is the standard one provided by your bank. It's not provided by Wellington, it's not provided by the credit union. We're brokering access to your bank directly, and behind the scenes we can then go and collect all the information, and as part of signing up to that, the member is then providing their consent up front. So those are just some examples of how you can capitalize on getting access to account information for your members. We then think about it from a payments or deposits standpoint. Okay, so if you think about the ability to get money into your credit union, okay, so what this means is effectively open banking allows for what's commonly referred to as pay by bank, right? And effectively what this means is that you could allow a member to make a deposit into their savings account, their shares balance, or to pay their loan, for example, simply by saying, I want to pay by my bank. They choose their bank from a list, log in, authorize the payment, and they're done. Okay, so look, why would you want to do this? One, faster for the member, and faster from a credit union banking standpoint. Can be considerably cheaper in terms of direct peer-to-peer payments, and it's cutting out a considerable number of steps in the process. Easier for the member, it's kind of not hunting about looking for their cards, trying to go through doing separate secure customer authentication and one-time passcodes, direct integration. Enhanced security and fraud prevention. So this is a big one, right? And this is all about saying, well, look, if the member is basically the burden of proof and the responsibility then sits with the member's initiating the payment, okay, and they're authorizing it via their secure customer authentication with their bank. So they're making the payment, and increasingly what that means is that you can then result in a faster settlement. Okay, so it provides real-time value, yeah, but the settlement process as we move into faster payments and we start talking about SEPA instant and so on, allows for real-time settlement depending on the bank and how that's been integrated into the open banking platform. Okay, so these are just some potential use cases based on the two core services provided by the open banking platform as it stands today. Just referencing back to my point earlier about this being evolving. Look, open bank's really only been about a couple of years, really gaining in momentum for all the good reasons that we've been talking about. And one example of where there's still work to do in terms of the open banking platform, right? So payments and deposits, for example, are singular payments, doesn't currently support recurring. That's something that the Open Banking Federation are looking at. I think that will come in time, but it's just about how you then do a single authorization for multiple payments. Yeah, so that's something they're very much looking at, and there's a body of work taking place, and we're involved and excited to see how that evolves over the coming weeks and months. So if we now kind of move on to look, what does that mean in terms of why we're all here today? Okay, so basically what we've done is we have then said, well, look, if we aggregate all these things together and we look at our technology platform, we look at our customers, and we look at our look at the members and look at the demand, and then equally we look at where there are opportunities. So either there's a problem to solve or there's an opportunity to improve an existing process, right? And how can open banking lend itself to that? Because this is not just technology for the sake of technology. It's about deploying it in a sensible value add way. Okay, so what we've done is identified a very specific use case, okay, that we've implemented into our platform. And it's all about streamlining the loan application for the member, and providing both a streamlined, a more secure, a more verified, and hopefully a faster underwriting process, or facilitating the underwriting process from a credit union standpoint. So win-win. So how have we done that? So we've set ourselves out a number of specific goals and drivers for this use case. So one, we want to be able to collect the bank statement from the member's bank account automatically. Two, we want to make it easier for members, so that if they're applying for a loan, and they're increasingly doing online, we want to make it easier for the member to get that data to us. And therefore, if they don't have to go and hunt about and try and find their bank statement, they don't have to take a picture of it, try and get it to a PDF, try and get it uploaded. We can remove that step entirely. All we're asking them to do is connect their account. Thirdly, we have the opportunity here for them to connect multiple accounts. So increasingly, we see members who maybe have two or three accounts, maybe have one for paying bills, a separate one that they get their salary paid into, so etc. So they can connect multiple accounts to the service. And then finally, from a credit union standpoint, because you're getting the raw data, the transaction data, you can then automatically gain financial insights into the spending patterns of this member. Which is obviously crucial when you're trying to make a loan assessment. And the value here is because actually you're getting the data rather than a PDF or a piece of paper, that you have to then print out and try and manually step through. So that was the use case. So if we now look a little bit at what does that mean from a member journey standpoint, okay? So what the little diagram on the screen is showing you is, look, for a member who wants to apply for a loan online, okay, this is the journey that they will go on with the open banking integration. So basically, the member chooses how they want to apply. So basically, they can either use the Scion Plus banking portal, or they can use the app, and they click apply for a loan. They choose the amount of the loan, purpose of the loan, frequency and payment as per usual. But at this crucial stage, what we are doing is encouraging the member to connect their bank account, okay? And that's by providing some narrative on the screen that says, look, this is quicker and easier for you, and it's more likely to facilitate a faster decision from the credit union, okay? So actively encouraging, not mandating, but actively encouraging. At that point, if they choose yes, they want to connect their account, then the steps are they get to choose the bank they want to connect. They then log into they're automatically prompted to log into their bank. They authorize the connection, and then that's them done from an open banking connection standpoint, and then it hands back to the loan application. Okay, so what we've done then in our standard loan application process, there's two stages that then take place. One is in relation to prompting the member for salary information. Secondly is prompting them for their financial commitments. So what we've done with our new open banking integration is we've made both of those steps optional for the credit union. Okay, so what that means is that within the credit union, you can choose that if the member connects their bank account, do you want to still ask them for their salary and their financial commitments, or do you want to skip those two steps, given that you have their full transactions from their bank statement for the last 3 to 6 months. And by the way, there's a configuration option within the system that says how far back do you want to go in terms of the bank statement. So it can either be 3 months or 6 months, and that's a configuration option that we can apply. But basically what this means is that you can then make a decision that says, well, look, if I've got access to their bank statement and I'm subsequently going to run a credit check, either via CCR or Experian or someone else, then do I want to make this as simple and frictionless a process for the member? Okay, and that's entirely your decision. Then subsequently, all you would require from the member is them to supply any supporting documentation that you require as part of your loan as per normal, which now obviously does not include a bank statement because we've collected that automatically. And at that point, it's then submitted to the credit union for review. Okay, so from that point of view, this can be as simple as select your loan purpose and amount, connect your account, any additional documentation and submit. Okay, so with that in mind, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Alan, who's actually going to provide a live demonstration of the journey that I've just walked you through. Alan will go a little bit deeper as well, and he will show you how that data then manifests itself in Scion from a credit union standpoint. So basically, Alan will be wearing kind of two hats here as we go through this demo. So Alan, at this stage, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for that. So. Morning, everybody. So, my name's Alan, and I'm part of a digital development team, and I'm basically going to spend the next few minutes walking you through the integration that we have implemented in our loan application process. Hopefully you'll see throughout this that how frictionless and easy we've made this for the member, and it we shall start. So, okay, so basically when the member is first applies for the loan, they'll be brought into the loan application screen as per normal, and they will complete the normal steps of entering the purpose for the loan and the amount that they want to borrow. So complete those as per normal, just as the normal loan application process. So then towards the bottom of the screen here, we have added some additional configurable text to the application to, as Ian said, where we want to persuade the user to connect their bank, as it makes the process much easier for them and much quicker essentially here. So this will be configurable text. We will sort of inform the user that it's a very secure process that uses bank level encryption. Basically, none of their credentials or data as at risk, and we'll also highlight the reasons as well as to why they should do this, because essentially it will make the process much easier for them and ultimately make the whole loan application process quicker. So once the members read the text there and they've decided that they want to actually connect their bank account, it's a really straightforward and easy process. So the member will click on this connect bank account button, and then this basically kicks off the authentication process. So initially, the member will get to choose the country where their main bank is based. As I say, when we're doing this, we would we ideally want the member to connect their sort of everyday current account rather than savings accounts and things like that. So we'll basically specify that in the text. So, for instance, if the member was to select Ireland, we're brought to a little screen where the member can view basically what type of data that we are collecting from their bank account. So if they click on each of these little pluses here, it gives them a brief introduction as to what type of data we are retrieving. So in this instance, we're going to be retrieving some personal information, their account information, their transactions, their balance, their direct debits, and some standing orders. Also, as well, we sort of highlight again, as I say, because security in this is very important. We again highlight that how secure this is, and it's again using secure sort of bank level encryption for all and for all the communication that's going on, so their data is not at risk at any point. So so at this point, I'm going to go through and connect up a bank account here. So I've just switched to the UK banks. Actually, I should have actually just if we just allow that, actually we can see what banks here are available in Ireland. So we've got basically lots of the main players, AIB, Permanent TSB, and a few of the sort of new fintech banks as well. So if we go back to connecting my own bank, so we'll basically go through the process of connecting a bank to the system. So basically, you search for your bank, you click on the link, and at this point, we hand over control to the person's bank. So you should notice here, basically, each of the banks essentially offer their own implementation of how they do this. So each bank will have a slightly different process for this, but most of them are fairly straightforward and easy to follow. So at this point, we're asked for our mobile number. We're asked to enter a PIN code, and then at this point, basically the open banking integration will send a notification to my Revolut app on my mobile device, which I will launch and approve. Great. So I've literally just approved that on my phone by biometric login into the Revolut app. So then basically our open banking integration then basically it just asks for some additional permission to correct the data. So we can see here what if there were multiple accounts in my Revolut account here, you would see you would have the option to select different accounts, or so in theory you could either select all of them or just one. And again, we also just show them again just to confirm what sort of data that we are returning. So if the member is happy to continue, they just click on the authorize button here, and then that is essentially the connection complete, and we now have a connection to that member's bank. So what's going on in the background now is actually basically we've just retrieved 3 months worth of transactional data from that member's bank account. So that's how quick and easy the process is. Just to note actually as well, actually you see the consent for that authorization lasts for 90 days. So after we've completed this loan process, if the member was to come back and apply for another loan within those 90 days, rather than having to go through that authentication process, we could reuse the existing consent that they gave us to just go off and retrieve that data. So at this point, basically the member can continue on with the loan process as per normal. So we'll just click on the proceed button. At this point, the process is pretty much the same as it was previously. So we basically get them to verify some personal details and just fill out some general sort of how long they lived, their current address and things like that, and their marital status. So we'll just complete those. And as Ian said, we've basically made this employment details section configurable and the financial commitments section configurable. For the purpose of this demo, we've just made the employment details section mandatory and turned off the financial commitment section, just to show this how frictionless and easy it can be for the member. So the member will complete their employment details as they normally would. They also have the ability then to upload any other documentation that they need, the likes of a pay slip or any other documents that you normally ask for as a credit union. And then we ask them a couple of loan protection insurance questions as well. And again, just move on to the next step. And as you can see there, we basically skipped out the financial commitment section now, because essentially we have all the customers' transactional data now in our system. So we've skipped that process out, and now we can the member can enter some notes in relation to the application if they so need to do so. So they'll click on to the next step, and then they're brought to the final step of the process, which is the terms and conditions. They'll read the terms and conditions as per normal. If they're happy, they will agree with that, and then they will submit the application. So at that point, basically all the data that we've collected during our application will be sent down to Scion, as it normally would do for a normal loan application. So the screen has just appeared here is not a screen that the member will see. This is this is sort of an example of some of the data that you will be able to access from Scion. So basically what will happen is basically that whenever the data goes down into Scion and the loan application is created, the credit union staff will be able to launch a what we call the open banking dashboard that will be and it will basically display a range of transactional data and trends that from the data that we have retrieved from the member's bank. So as an example here, we basically, you can see here, we've created 3 little pie charts for the last 3 months of data. So we've done the data that is returned from the bank is categorized, so we can see the members' spending habits over the last 3 months. We also give them some additional transaction analysis, where we can sort of compare the members' incomings and outgoings on a monthly basis. And then we also can also give a sort of a running balance of the account that they attached on a monthly basis. So so we can see their spending trends again as to as to how that member is managing their money. So that's all fairly pretty useful. So and as well as that, as I say, we will have retrieved by default 3 months worth of transactional data from that from the member's bank. So we've also basically given the ability to basically view that transactional data on the screen here as well. So so no, rather than having to manually trawl through the paper version of the member statement, we basically created a searchable table where you can search for essentially search on any of the columns here that are displayed. So for instance, if we wanted to see any credits that are applied to the account, we can just type in the item that you're searching for, and it will search that table. So there'll be so it will remove the manually having to sort of search through each of those statements, which a great time saver. So as well as the table there, we will also be attaching a PDF version of the transactional data that we have retrieved from the member's bank account as well, and that will be attached as a stored document to the loan application. So you will have essentially a hard copy of that data as well. So hopefully there you'll have seen that how easy and straightforward that process is, and for the member, say, from application to click on the submit button there can only be, it's a really quick and seamless process. So it's so hopefully you liked what you've seen there. So I shall hand back over to Ian now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. That was great to see that in action. So I'll just share these slides again then. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, guys. So look, in terms of what's next then, so Alan sort of walked us through there, just for clarity, 2 things. Basically, he showed us that through the online banking portal, how we actively encourage member to connect their bank account, the process of connecting their bank account, and in Alan's example, he connected his Revolut account. Okay, and obviously the process of connecting that account in terms of picking your bank is standard. In terms of the login process to the bank will depend on the individual bank, but will be familiar to the member. But then, so equally what you can see is that that's a fairly simple process for the member, but then you can hopefully see the wealth of data that comes back in terms of the analytics that are available purely by having that raw data available to you as an output of the connected bank account. So really, in terms of what's next, look, 2 things really I just want to cover off. One is that in terms of what Alan has shown you, that is currently in our testing environment. We will move that into user acceptance testing is our current plan towards the end of May, late May, maybe early June, with a plan to rolling this out and making this available to anyone who wants to avail of it in June of this year. So fairly aggressively looking at that. We're also looking at the potential of can we offer this service for in-branch and telephone type inquiries, which is basically just about being able to send an email to a member and asking them to perform a similar exercise, basically if they're remote. So we'll be looking at that as a kind of a fairly quick second phase to the loan application process. But we're also quite excited about the opportunity around payments and online deposits. So we're just in the process of creating a technical solutions design, following which we'll be seeking for some of our customers to be involved in a special interest group, because we'd like to explore where there's real value and options here in terms of offering that instant pay by bank opportunity and what that might mean. But we see this as a sort of end of the year type project, but something that we'd like to kick off quite soon, because we think there's lots and lots of opportunities there from that standpoint. So that's what's next. So probably at this point, I'm going to pause on the presentation, and we'll open the floor for questions. Conscious we probably covered a reasonable amount there, both in terms of the slideware and the definitions, and also in terms of the product. So yeah, happy to take any questions from the floor or from the chat. Emma or Rebecca, if there's any.
Yeah, I can see some in here. So the first one is from Kieran, and he's asking, are other SEPA/European banks supported at this time?
Yeah, there's quite a long list of banks, as hopefully you saw whenever Alan opened up the little list there. So what we could do is we can get a list, Kieran, of the banks that are currently supported. So, but basically, yeah, the main pillar banks are all in there, Alan, aren't they, in terms of Bank of Ireland and AIB and so on from an Irish bank's standpoint. But they're fairly excessive list, you know. So the UK banks are all obligated to be connected. The fintechs are connected by default, and the pillar banks in Ireland are all connected as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Julie has asked, is TrueLayer the API?
TrueLayer is the Aisp that we are working with at the moment. We're just in the process of finalising our contract signatures with TrueLayer. So, but basically, yeah, the demo we've provided this morning is using the TrueLayer API integration as part of the Aisp platform diagram that I showed earlier. Yeah.
Okay, Brian is asking, if the member does not give consent to access their bank account and also fail to upload documents, do they get a message to inform them that we can't access their loan without supporting documents?
Maybe that's one for you, Alan. I mean, I guess that could be mandatory, can it? The supporting documents at that piece, yeah.
Yes, we certainly could make that mandatory. Yeah, and there'd be no reason why why we couldn't do that. So yeah, we certainly could take that under consideration.
Yeah, so I guess, Brian, what we'd prefer to do here is get ahead of that by saying, look, if that was your rule, that we would apply that as configuration to say, look, if they don't connect their bank account and they don't provide their statement, that basically it's mandatory, so that they can't submit without that, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so Kieran has asked, for the shared data, the monthly spending graphs, which entity, i.e. a bank or credit union, decides the categories of transactions?
So there's two. There are two classifications. There's a classification and a category, isn't that right, Alan? That come back. So every bank that's connected must provide the category. Isn't that right, Alan? In terms of basically breaking down every single transaction into a standard open banking set of categories. Okay. Then there's a subsequent classification. Now, the classification is done by the Aisp, and basically what that's doing is tagging the merchant ID and the description of the transaction and using AI and big data analysis basically to try and aggregate them into specific classifications to enable you to do the analysis. So not being done by Wellington, it's a combination of merchant ID, mandatory category from the bank, and then artificial intelligence working out based on the pattern of the description of the transaction, basically. So that's how it works, yeah. And obviously these things can improve over time, but part of the reason that we're providing the raw data is to enable you to say, well, look, if that's what the summary data and the analytics are telling you, then also lets you drill down into it to say, well, actually, do I want to look at the actual raw data as well, basically. So that's the raw data, and the search capability allows you to do that.
Thanks for that. So Simon asked, you possibly did cover this a little, Ian, but Simon's asked, the process outlined is for those who log in online. Can open banking be provided at the counters through Scion?
Yeah, so we're looking at that as probably a set. So the initial use case is about online. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But actually, the process, Simon, is fairly similar, right? In that what we're suggesting here is that that piece where you just connect the bank account, we designed that as a component so that what we can do is if someone presents in branch, we can send them an email to say we require you to provide extra information and basically ask them to just connect their bank account, and then it will send the same information down to Scion. Okay, so that isn't in the current release, but that's something that we've designed the system to enable us to do, and it's just then a matter of invoking the email to the member to ask them to provide their consent online to then collect the data. basically. So that's in plan currently.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. So Jerry has asked, does any of the expenditure or income values retrieved from the member's bank get stored on Scion?
So this is something we're looking at in more detail at the moment. So basically, we do capture all this information, right? The problem is someone asked there a few moments ago about the classification of the data, and obviously this can vary depending on the merchant and where they spend, and how they spend the money. The other problem with some of the expense data is it depends how far back you go, so if you get 3 months, does that cover all the quarterly charges, and so on. So we do have all the data and we do store it. Mapping them automatically to expenditure details can be more difficult, because what you won't know is the frequency. So it's not so much the mapping of it, but it's the frequency. So in other words, I could see that Alan Adair paid out 50 quid in the month of April to Sky TV, right? What I won't know, but unless I ask Alan a specific question, is whether that's a monthly or a quarterly or an annual charge, right? So we can map it through, but because you're just getting transaction data, there's no context, to enable you to get the frequency.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. Again, you may have covered some of this, but I'll just ask it just in case. So John has asked, some members breeze through the online application without uploading supporting documents. Can they be reminded to give access to the open banking or upload docs before they're allowed to proceed and submit the application?
Yes, but I actually think, Alan, just as I read John's question, that if we kind of link that to Brian's previous question, that what we do is, if we make it mandatory, John, what we then do is give them the option at that point to connect their bank again, basically. Yeah. So we do that very, very easily. Yeah. And then that way, basically, we're covering off two things. You're kind of telling them up front, and to your point, John, we're telling them before they submit. So yeah, we'll incorporate that, because that's simple. Yeah. Thanks. That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Cool. We have two questions just around what the costings involved.
Yeah, so look, there are so we're not going to provide costings on this call. Obviously, you can speak to your CXM and we can provide individual costings. But then, just in terms of the model, in terms of how costings work, there's an initial kind of implementation and setup, to get you onboarded with open banking, and then basically, as with all of these types of service providers, there's basically a transactional charge. So basically, and how that works is that it's per successful connection. Okay, so in other words, what that means is that Alan kind of showed you earlier the ability to go in and look for a bank. So obviously that process doesn't cost any money. Or if you go through and attempt to connect your bank, but so when Alan, it's hard to visualize, but when Alan got the pop up on his phone, he had to authorize it. If he decided not to do it, well, then that wouldn't be a transaction. So it's measured in terms of successful transactions, which basically means that raw data that we looked at coming back, that's how it denotes a successful transaction, basically.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. Brandon has asked, what happens with multiple current accounts?
So basically, after the way we see that working is that when they come back, you saw Alan connecting his account, and then it came back and he had the proceed button, right? So basically, at that stage, then they have the ability to connect basically a second account, right, which just takes them through the same cycle again, okay? But effectively, it doesn't aggregate the data, right, because you can't really aggregate it because they're from two different banks. But basically, what we can do is take them through that journey twice, effectively. Yeah. Don't know, Alan, if you've been to add to that, from that.
That's right. Essentially, we'll give them the ability to connect multiple banks at the process there as well. So yeah, that will be.
Okay, thanks, guys. So Tom's asking, how are check payments categorized in payment history?
I think they go down as credits, don't they? As far as.
Yeah, I believe so. We might need to double check that one on, but I would expect so. Yeah. Emma, if you flag that one, we'll take that offline. Tom, and come back to you just and clarify. But I think they go down as credits, as Alan said. But we'll confirm that one for Tom. Yeah.
No worries, got that down. So Mick has asked, will the Scion system be able to delete any of the loan data, including the banking data, per the CU's data retention policy? For example, say 6 years after the loan has been completed.
Yeah, so so this is actually one of the interesting pieces that we're working with some specific customers on at the moment, right? So what we've done here is Alan showed you a little PDF version, which effectively is a retrospective statement, isn't it, Alan? So because basically we don't actually get a statement from the bank. What we do is we get the transactions. And obviously we can put the transactions onto a document, save it as a PDF, and call it a statement, right? So basically, Mick, what we're doing is we are doing exactly that and storing it in Scion. It will then have a document category. That document category you can apply your GDPR retention rules to. Okay, so that's the plan. The raw data and the analytics that Alan was showing you, what we are going to do is basically store that data for a fixed period of time, right? But basically, once effectively, my view would be that once the loan has been either approved or rejected, that you no longer want to hold the transactional, the data, the transactional data, because you have the PDF of the transactions. And the PDF, because it's a document, can then adhere to all the GDPR data retention rules, basically.
All right, thanks, Ian. And then there's one question here from Tom saying, does the member get notifications of our request to access information referencing the 90 days authorization?
No, so basically they consent up front, don't they, Alan? Effectively, yeah. So with the current implementation, Tom, we're actually only calling for the data once, right? Technically, you do have consent, so we could call for it again up to 90 days without having to notify the member, because they've been prior to this, they've given their consent for up to 90 days, and they wouldn't get notified again because they don't need to be. Okay, but with the current use case, we're only calling for it once. Okay.
Okay, thanks. So there's a question here from Jerry just saying around the cost. If the costs are associated with the data request, then why not retrieve 12 months data in order to view payment trends?
Yeah, I mean, part of this will really be about GDPR rather than payments. From a costing standpoint, Jerry. I mean, when we call for the transactional information, we can specify how far back to go, right? And basically, the way we built it is that we can give the credit union the choice that says, you tell us how far back you want to go, and we'll pull the data back. So, if someone wants 12 months, I don't see, Alan, any reason why that couldn't be just configured as 12 months.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah. That will just be a configurable setting where we can pull back as far back as anybody wants, really, and so long as the data is there.
All right, well, thanks for that, guys. There's no more questions in the chat, but feel free if anyone has any questions to unmute your mic and let us know. I think that might be everything then, guys. Thanks for that.
Okay, that's great. Listen, thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for some great questions there. I think that's been really useful, and a couple of great suggestions in the middle of it as well, which is fantastic. So, look, from my point of view, just to kind of wrap this up, like, we're really excited about this. It's something we've talked about for a long time. It's great to see it come to fruition and be really close to rollout. It is sort of phase one of a series of integrations that we will be building, right? And I think I sort of talked a little bit earlier about credit unions not being obligated to be a payment provider integrated into the open banking platform. I think that will change, right? So therefore, this is about, well, how do we help you consume and utilize that data, but safe in the knowledge that probably at some point in the future you will be required to facilitate this and provide this the other way around as well. So that's about us making sure that we have data available, we have APIs, and we have things like biometric authentication in our app to enable people to do that easily. So we're kind of building towards that. So although it's not obligatory now, it's coming, yeah. And therefore, this is about a journey really in terms of how open banking kind of evolves over time. So look, thanks again for everyone for attending. We will have some follow-ups, won't we, Emma? I think in terms of outputs following this, we'll probably be reaching out to some people both around user acceptance testing for what we've seen today, but also in terms of engagement on the SIG over the coming months in relation to payments. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.